You know what I got the other day, Pete? Stephen King's latest. Want to borrow it?
Do you know who you're talking to?
What do you mean?
Andy, when's the last time I read a paper book? It's been decades. I would much rather use Kindle, or better yet, Audible.
What am I thinking? I don't read paper books anymore either. I'm an audiobook guy all the way. For those looking to listen to the books behind the films that we've talked about here on Movies We Like, not to mention all the other podcasts in the Next Reel family, get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at thenextreel.com/audible.
There are so many great adaptations from Movies We Like available in audio form.
Early on, we covered Casino Royale with director Matthew Gratzner. You went through all of the 007 books on Audible, right?
I did indeed. What a series. We also covered Room with legendary Dee Wallace and Never Let Me Go with costume designer Alana Moorehead.
We chatted about Fat City with cinematographer Sam Levy and Silver Linings Playbook with the great composer Harry Gregson Williams.
101 Dalmatians and Bambi.
Apocalypse Now, There Will Be Blood, The Thin Red Line.
There's so many great adaptations with so many great guests, and you can get all these as audiobooks on Audible, along with thousands of other great reads.
Producing this podcast is a lot of fun, but it does take a lot of time. We have already dropped the dynamically inserted ads because they are so annoying and have no connection to our content.
Plus, they just jam those things in wherever they see fit.
We listened when you said you didn't like them. So now, we're directly appealing to you, our dear listener. Please consider an Audible subscription to help support Movies We Like and the Next Reel's family of podcasts.
I've been using Audible along with my family for decades now. I love it, and I've read hundreds of books through it. Couldn't be more pleased with their service, and I know you'll love it too. Head to thenextreel.com/audible and get your free trial. It really helps us out. And you have a world of over 200,000 audiobooks open to you.
So much great material available. Dive in with a free trial and get your first free audiobook at thenextreel.com/audible.
Start listening to amazing audiobooks of your favorite movie source material with your first free audiobook today. That's thenextreel.com/audible. Andy, I know you've never been happier than when you're sitting by a warm fire, snuggled up in a flannel and basking in the glow of an old-school budget spreadsheet.
It is a special day I can shut down the world for a little me time.
In a world full of applications, why do these antiquated documents and spreadsheets still run the world? And why haven't they been updated in over 50 years? That's why we want to talk about Coda.
Coda is a new kind of doc that brings words, data, and teams together. It comes with a set of building blocks that anyone can combine to create a doc as powerful as an app.
Coda runs our entire business here at True Story FM, from show scheduling across dozens of podcasts and scripts for thousands of episodes, to budgets and plans and wikis and more.
Coda lets us see our business in a new light. If you'd like to shine a light on productivity in your business and save money along the way, check out Coda today at thenextreel.com/Coda. Welcome to the Next Reel Speakeasy on rashpixel.fm. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
Oi!
Each month on the Next Reel Speakeasy, we invite an industry guest to join us, and instead of serving up their favorite cocktails, they serve up movies that they love so that we can all talk about them. We'd like to welcome our guest to this month's show, sound mixer Michael B. Koff, a.k.a. Coffee. Coffee got the bug for the movie biz when Mrs. Doubtfire filmed outside his high school. Every day, he'd watch from behind the barricade, fascinated with the equipment, the people, the process. Eventually, he found his way to London, where he spent his junior year of college getting an emphasis in film. It was there that he got his first real-world experience, falling in with the sound guy on MTV Europe. After graduation, he moved to LA and ended up in reality TV, mixing the sound in shows all around the world. But Coffee always found the sound in the scripted world so much more attractive, so after 5 years, he took a leap of faith and switched focus. Needless to say, things have worked out well so far. Coffee has mixed sound for such movies as The Kingdom, Piranha 3D, Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters, Hot Tub Time Machine 2, Casa de Mi Padre, and most recently, our favorite little monster movie, 10 Cloverfield Lane. Recently, he worked on the Zach Galifianakis, Kristen Wiig, Owen Wilson, Kate McKinnon comedy Masterminds, coming out later this year, and he's currently in Boston working with Peter Berg on Patriots Day, the true story of the Boston Marathon bombing. When he's not busy on set, Coffee has recently become a licensed private pilot and plane owner, and spends as much time as he can both in the air and on the ground with his family. Welcome to the show, Coffee.
Thank you.
Now, you are bringing a film that should be quite a fun one to talk about. This is the film that Guy Ritchie did, following up Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. It is Snatch.
It is Snatch.
Okay, I've got questions. Two questions. Now, first, and I don't want to get any hopes up because we have been asked before to talk about Tarantino, but your original pick was Pulp Fiction, and then you gave us a last-minute audible and said, hey, what about Snatch?
Yeah.
So I'm dying to know, why'd you want to shake this up and talk about Snatch instead?
You know, when I started thinking about Pulp Fiction, the things that I like about it, the things that I liked about it are the things that are emphasized in Snatch throughout. You know, there's moments in Pulp Fiction that kind of bring the end back to the beginning in reverse. And that's exactly what I liked about Snatch is basically the way the film was shot is not in order. It's not in logical order. And it kind of goes, it's not as bad as Memento. Memento is a bit more, I like working in reverse and kind of reverse engineering the story. And Snatch does that in a way that doesn't require too much thinking, unlike Memento, but it doesn't do it enough in Pulp Fiction. Not to mention, Pulp Fiction's a little more mainstream, and I'm amazed at how many people still haven't seen Snatch.
Totally agree with that, yeah.
That was a big thing when you switched it up. I mean, I watched Pulp Fiction again. I was excited to talk about it. But then you brought up Snatch, and I was like, gosh, yeah, I haven't seen that since it was in theaters. I remember enjoying it, but I don't really remember much about it. And so it's actually really refreshing to talk about this film, and actually was really exciting to watch it again because I just hadn't seen it in so long. And I kind of, it rekindled my joy for the film because it is really kind of just nothing but fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun, entertaining film, and I feel like I think it was brilliantly done in terms, especially of transitional storytelling. You know, the way that they transition in between all of these different people and their individual stories is amazing, and it's just one wild ride. You know, I feel like Pulp Fiction's got peaks and valleys, whereas Snatch is kind of just high octane, and as soon as you think it's going to get dull, and one of the other characters all of a sudden walks through the door randomly and are now part of that main storyline.
Frankie Four Fingers has a diamond the size of a fist.
86 carats.
Do you know something that I've done?
Cheese is flawless.
Where?
London. You know, fish, chips, cup of tea, Mary Poppins, London.
What do I know about diamonds? I'm a boxing promoter.
I've got a bare knuckle fight. I want to use the pikey.
Best your back's there. Concentrate.
What? You're going to have to repeat that.
Best your back's there. Concentrate.
You what? What's a gun doing in your trousers? Protection. Protection from what? The Germans? Open the case and give me the stone.
The only man who knew the combination, you just shot.
In the quiet words of the Virgin Mary, come again.
Yeah, there's this term that Pete and I were arguing about before the show that somebody came up with probably about 10 years ago called hyperlink cinema, which is kind of this type of story that involves a number of different stories that are all kind of interwoven and everything. And despite the maybe silliness of the actual title, I really do love this type of storytelling that you see where it's got a whole bunch of different stories and they kind of all weave together, and you see these characters kind of in and out of each other's lives, but usually what they do is I like how it all kind of ends up tying up at the end. And the way that you've got this diamond story about this diamond heist, and then you have this boxing story with these boxing promoters and how everything comes together. And I really, in particular, love the fact that these two stories kind of collide in this really interesting way where the guys in the boxing world end up with this dog from the diamond world and have no idea about this whole other world until they get the dog examined.
Yeah, it's cool. And there's also a lot of relationship storyline in there, too. I mean, this is one of the few movies, I feel like, that doesn't involve any kind of female. There isn't a single woman in this movie. And it's not about love. It's not about trying to get the girl. It's literally about the underbelly of amateur crime. And it's hilarious. Like, even the thing that I loved about it too is the terminology that they use, because it's British. I find myself quoting Snatch, quotes from that so often, And, you know, I watched it yesterday too, and I haven't seen it in probably 6 or 7 years. And I was just laughing hysterically. And, you know, tomorrow I'm sure I'll be spitting out more lines from it that I forgot. But yeah, it's cool because of the fact that, you know, in the very beginning, it basically just shows you the 10 or 12 characters that are going to play a part in the movie. And at some point, they all end up crossing paths and becoming part of each other's story.
Which is really artfully done. Have either of you taken a look at the script? At Ritchie's original script. Andy, did you ever?
I have not. No, I didn't.
I haven't read it all either, but I found an interesting interview with the producer of Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels that got me thinking about this, which is, you know, she said, when I first got this movie, the script was a disaster. It was incredibly difficult to read. It was a mess full of just crazy typos, and it was so tied up in knots in characters. She said, I actually had to make like a flow chart of character interactions as I was reading it, and I kept thinking to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I taking a chance on this movie when the script is nearly impenetrable? And realized that I was laughing a lot, that it ended up just being funny. And so I decided to take a chance on it. And I'm excited to actually sit down and read the script, because I wonder just how much better Ritchie has gotten between that and this film, because they're very similar. I almost feel like this film is, you know, Lock, Stock perfected. I think a lot of people, you know, look at this as you know, the criticism of the film is this is Lock, Stock, Redux, and I really disagree with that. I think this is just takes what he already did well in Lock, Stock and made it really exceptional.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw it, there was obvious, you know, there was some character crossovers to Lock, Stock, but I don't think it's, you know, I don't associate the two as being the same movie or a better one or the other. I felt like at that point, after watching Snatch, that it was kind of Guy Ritchie's stamp, these kind of movies. But
I think
really,
that's probably a better way to put it, yeah.
But really, he hasn't done it since Snatch. He did the Sherlock Holmes movies and stuff like that, but none of them really touched me personally the way Snatch did.
Yeah, he really kind of has stayed away from this. I mean, his style is definitely there, but as far as the way that he does the storytelling, I mean, I guess you could say he kind of played around with it a little bit, maybe in something like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., just as far as kind of the flashbacks as to when you'd find something out and you jump back in time to kind of get back to the point, kind of that non-linear storytelling a little bit, but nothing to the extent that he did here or in Lock, Stock. I really wanted to watch Lock, Stock again before talking about this one. I just didn't have a chance, but I remember really enjoying both. And I think you're right. I think the style is there. The characterizations are there. The storytelling is pretty similar, but I think they're both such different stories with such vastly different characters that for me, it's just like two great films by a great director. You know, I didn't feel like I was just watching Lock, Stock all over again.
Right.
I think he does some, and I guess when I say that, it's really the visual, like you say, the visual stamp that he has on these things, and how exciting it was to watch this film again and see that glorious slow-mo at the end of Brad Pitt, you know, flying through the air, and watching how they made that sequence. You know, shot him underwater, they shot him floating at 800 frames per second. They did, I mean, just a number of things, and then to watch Sherlock Holmes, which I had a great time watching Sherlock Holmes. Like you said, they didn't have that much of an impact, but visually, the way they orchestrate the Sherlock Holmes predictive fight sequences, I think, were exceptional and tied directly back to this kind of style. I just really love it.
The fight sequences were exactly the same.
Yeah.
As was the music. You know,
during
the fight sequences, the music in Snatch is fantastic. You know, everything from the fast-paced stuff to the Jewish ringtones. I mean, I feel like it's one of the best opening sequences of a movie in terms of, you know, after Turkish says, you know, and they're from Antwerp, and they go into this security footage thing where camera doesn't cut, and the camera basically is just following these 4 or 5 rabbis, you know, going from layer to layer, getting through security to bring us into the first scene of the actual movie post-credit is awesome. You know, no one else has done that, and it's just a very creative way to show this, what could be a huge walk and talk that's logistically, you know, a logistical nightmare to shoot.
And a narrative nightmare to follow.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that annoys me about that is the sound of that opening sequence.
Why
because
is that?
There's no perspective on what you're seeing. You're hearing them like they're in a booth talking. It's not well synced. And, I'm all about perspective audio. Being a sound mixer, if somebody's deep in the background, I want it to, I'm mixing it to sound like they're deep in the background. I don't want the presence of, of somebody right in front of camera. In that whole sequence, the perspective never changed. So even though you're on a security camera watching them 40 feet away walk towards a security camera, the perspective of the audio is still like they're, right underneath a boom mic or whatever.
Right. So even if we're listening to it through the speaker in the security office, it should still be crappier audio if they're standing far away. We should hear that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't hear them at the far end. And honestly, what they're talking about doesn't matter. I feel like that all that dialogue should have been mixed in a way that is bright and tinty and, crackly and what it would sound like to the security guys that are actually sitting there watching the security footage. But, I pick things apart, especially when it comes to sound. So, that's one of those things that, there was quite a few issues with the sound, if you will, but, it doesn't affect the storytelling to me. Like, it's still an amazing story.
Yeah, and I can see the point that you have there because, I mean, really that their conversation about, the Virgin Mary and everything, it's very superfluous. And it's just one of those random conversations I suppose they would be having if they're trying to, pose as rabbis in this heist. I mean, so it kind of makes sense, but the fact that we're hearing it that way doesn't make sense. But that being said, in the context of the story itself, you're right. I mean, it's such a great way to open the film where you've got this, it's a very steady, constrained way to kind of open where you just are following them on the security feed up until they get into this room, leading into just the most bonkers way to shoot the robbery with you've got these crazy 360 spins of the image. You've got these cuts where it like stretches the image apart and then puts it back together as a different image. And it's bonkers, but it is a great contrast that they set up there. And so I absolutely loved it, and I forgot all about it. So it was really exciting to me. I totally even forgot that was Benicio del Toro until he walked in and started the robbery and everything. So it was just so much fun to watch that way.
Yeah, and even once he gets into the truck, and he holds out the diamond. It's like the way that they introduce every character by going into that diamond, and then throwing the pack of money over to Saul or whoever's next. And they go through all the characters of Boris the Blade and Bullet Tooth Tony and Cousin Avi, and it's really cool that they basically transition through that one diamond and then come right back to the diamond and continue the story.
It is a fantastically innovative character introduction sequence, and it also sets the stage for allowing us to keep better track of who these people are, right? I mean, there's that whole kind of visual learner technique coming in here. You have to see the names associated with these people to keep track of them because there's such a big cast. Credit for the opening credit sequence goes to Stuart Hilton and Ian Cross at FAQ Design, and Will Perkins writes of their contribution on art of the title that cool as hell circa 2000, but the opening minutes of Snatch almost single-handedly reinvigorated the British gangster movie. And I think that's true. It absolutely is an incredible way to introduce this film.
And I would say even not just the British gangster films, but I mean, what was that one we were talking about earlier? Smoke and Aces, which is a Vegas story. I mean, that felt very much a part of this type of filmmaking, like they pulled directly from this film.
Yeah, I remember seeing that as well and thinking the same thing. I mean, I love gangster films and British films and if it's a heist, I'm all about it.
Well, and you can see so much of this influencing another one that I just really have a great time with is the Ocean series. I really love the big cast series and the heist, and you can absolutely see the influence of this kind of just the visual treatment of the heist and keeping track of big casts that, and the split screens and all the fun stuff.
I haven't seen, and keep in mind, I'm not a movie buff. Between work and family and all that, I don't get a whole lot of free time unless I'm on location like I am now to go to the movies. But I haven't seen any other films that really use the transitional storytelling the way Guy Ritchie does. Because he does it without dialogue. He does it with music and like, for example, the dogs chasing the hare, right? So it's all slow motion of these dogs, two dogs chasing one poor little hare, meanwhile cutting back and forth to big man Tyrone, or Tyrell, or whatever his name is, running from the gangsters from Bricktop through the streets, and we're just constantly going back and forth, and the hair is just ahead, and Tyrone's just ahead. And, you almost expect Tyrone to get away as soon as you see the hair leave the frame, but of course he doesn't, because he's big and gets caught and whatever. But, like those kind of back and forth type of cuts that are telling the same story, I don't know. I dig it.
I love that. That's one of my favorite sequences in there. And, the parallelism that we get through these stories. The other one that really sticks out at me is pretty much anytime Farina is on the phone with anybody, they're fantastic, right?
Yeah. On screen, period.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, he's just terrific. But the opening sequence when he's talking to Frankie Four Fingers about the diamond, he's talking about London and introducing London, and it keeps cutting back to Del Toro, who is getting a suit fitted, and every time he cuts, he's wearing a different suit. Like he's wearing different clothes, but there's only just the line. Like there's no way he could have done that. I find that hysterical. But introducing his gambling problem without really talking about the gambling problem while they're on the phone together, I think is brilliant. He says, "Oh, there's you got to go deal this with the bookie," and then it cuts to all those stills of Del Toro making bad decisions over the phone
The little
call.
Viva Las Vegas flash.
Exactly.
sequence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it's the same way with how they show, Farina going to London and coming back from London. It's just, it's a 7-second sequence, and it gets the point across, and it's just like, when he comes back and Customs says, "Is there anything to declare?" And he says, "Yeah, don't go to London."
Anything to declare? Yeah, don't go to England.
I love, something that I think that some of these gangster films like this, Ocean's 11, have really done well is blending storylines between so many different people. And I think it's hard when you have a cast that's so big to give them all a fair amount of screen time to tell everybody's stories. Somehow these guys do it so well. And that I think has been kind of a complaint in big superhero films like X-Men and Avengers, that people are always so concerned about, like, how are you going to be able to tell the stories of so many different people? And I think for some reason it seems harder there, but here they do it so well. And I love how they all have their own little storylines. And I think that it's possibly something some of the superhero films could take is giving other people different storylines to do, so you could have all these storylines tied together. My favorite storyline here was actually Vince, Tyrone, and Saul with all their robberies that they kept trying to do, and how nothing would go right for these guys. And it was so funny, like when they go into the bookie place and they are going to take all the money from the bookies, and there's no money there. And the woman is just too savvy, and she keeps shutting the doors on them and everything.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, one of the quotes that I'm always quoting on set, because, I have a sound trailer, and of course I always want it close to set. And usually the number one reason is because it's too tight, because we can't fit it in there. And I'm always saying, too tight? You could land a jumbo jet in there. And Transpo they don't like it, Like, that's probably the number one thing not to say to Transpo, because then I'm further and further from set.
We got to talk about Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Because I think this fits into that storyline. And to your point, Andy, I wonder if one of the challenges that these big, the superhero films are struggling with is that even if they don't necessarily have characters that are played by A-list actors, they do have A-list characters that everybody's watching. They're watching really, really closely. And this, as an original property, nobody's watching as closely about which character gets what kind of treatment. In this case, if there was ever a bit of that could be construed as stunt casting, this is it. Brad Pitt as the crazy gypsy bare knuckle boxing champion, speaking this crazy kind of rural Irish rural Irish tongue that people hardly understand.
Which was a great rip on, something Guy Ritchie came up with, kind of almost spoofing Lock, Stock, because so many people complained about not being able to understand anybody in that film. So he said, well, why don't I just have a character that even the characters in the movie can't understand, which I thought was a great way to kind of, rip on all of his critics who had a problem with that. It's so fun listening to Brad Pitt as he tries to talk as Mickey.
He's amazing. And he keeps it consistent throughout, too. It's almost like he created his own dialect. And it's throughout the movie, it's a consistent tongue. And the more you watch it, the more it makes sense and you totally get what he's saying.
What's really funny, if you watch it with the subtitles on, you can totally hear it.
Oh,
It's all
really?
right there. It's like a code that kind of opens up, and it's like the Matrix. You can suddenly see the pattern. It's bananas. He is really, really good. I found myself just transfixed by his character, and thought he totally pulled it off. I didn't feel stunty at all. And to that point about giving equal time, they did not give him Brad Pitt time. You know what I mean? Like, he ended up not the star of this film. It was very much an ensemble piece.
I remember reading, and I didn't do the research that you did, but I remember reading that he didn't take his normal rate. He didn't, he wanted to be part of the film and work with Guy, and it was a small part, so to speak. But the thing is, which is kind of odd, is I don't think he steals the show. And he's the biggest name, especially on American soil, but I feel like he fits into the storyline perfectly. He's one of the many characters that I feel like it's hard to pinpoint any one character in this movie that kind of runs away with it and holds it up, because I think Vinnie Jones is hilarious. He's fantastic.
Who doesn't even come into the film until the end of the second act.
Right. And Bricktop, I mean, he's just ruthless and mean, and when he starts talking about Nemesis, all I could think about was Pulp Fiction. Talking about the biblical. You know what I'm talking about.
Strike him down with ruthless.
Yeah. with the Aloha Burger or whatever it is.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
Ezekiel 25:17. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, Brad Pitt was amazing, but he was just one more character that, made the story go.
By the time you get to the end, you realize that him and these so-called pikeys, as everybody refers to them, are actually some of the most intelligent people in the film, as we find out that they've basically found a way to come out ahead of everybody by the time we get to the end. And I think a lot of that, and you mentioned no women in the film, except for the key character of his mother, and how that, how Bricktop makes a really bad decision in burning the caravan with his mother in it, because that really puts him into a place where, I mean, they come up with this plan to basically, take down Bricktop and his crew, and they end up winning, and I think that's a really interesting little element to this story that's completely unexpected.
And somehow it's this gypsy group that ends up tying every one of the stories together. They're the ones who destroy the gangs that are waiting at the camp. Brad Pitt's obviously in the ring and messing with the thing. They're in the alley out the back.
And they're the guys who gave the dog or sold the dog to Saul, who ends up, with the dog and the diamond and everything.
See, now, how did Saul end up with the dog? Because the dog was given to Tommy.
Right.
But then Saul comes into the shop with a dog, and I don't understand where that dog came from, and how they found it back at the Pikey site or the campsite, because they never went there to begin with. It was Tommy and the big guy, Tommy and the big guy that went there to buy the caravan.
But did they leave with that dog? I thought that was a different dog that they left with. I could be wrong.
Because it was the dog came from that was what's his name's Saul's friend. What was his Vinny came in with the dog. It was a different dog at the camp.
Vinny came in. Was Vinny behind the glass or was Saul? Yeah, Vinny was behind the glass.
Yep.
And Saul comes in with a dog, and he says, "Where did that come from?" And there's no explanation of how that dog came into the picture, even though the movie is named because of that dog, because the dog snatches. And the dog snatched the diamond, and the dog has the diamond. But I don't fully understand where that dog came from and how Vinny knew to go back to some pikey site to find the dog.
I swear it was a different dog when Tommy and Gorgeous George were driving away. I thought it was a different dog. Because they had a bunch of dogs.
But even if it was a different dog, how do you explain Vinny knowing to go to some pikey campground to find the dog? Because Saul says, "Where did you find it?" And Vinny says, "It went right back to the campground."
Well, the funny part about this dog was they actually had to replace it partway through filming, because the dog was apparently very difficult to work with. The scene when Vinny's in the back seat with the dog, he was wearing, I guess, a fur coat of some sort, and the dog decided to start humping him.
I heard that. And while Saul's up front and the dog is biting the hood of his jacket, you can kind of see Saul crack and start laughing for a minute, because it was all very, it was not supposed to happen that way.
And I guess he was also a biter. And and I think he bit somebody at some point when it was around the scene when he ended up eating the diamond. And he bit somebody, and they had to say goodbye to Bo and get a new dog to work with.
I think he bit Lenny, right? Lenny James Saul?
Yeah, I think
bit him
so.
in his stomach.
Really?
Right.
Yeah.
You guys have researched this movie a bit. I mean, do you have any idea what the schedule was like? How many shoot days they did this in?
I don't have that information.
I'm always curious because the overall budget wasn't much. I want to say
No,
it was
just
like
10
15
million.
million. It was 10 million?
Yeah,
Wow.
$10 million budget. So not very big. Not very big.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if they said anything in the commentary, and I am not. I didn't write that down if they did say it. So
Okay, I will confirm at this point. It is a totally different dog. In the
Okay.
beginning. It did jump out the window. Totally
Okay.
different dog. The first time we are introduced to the dog that takes the squeaky and the diamond is through Vinny when he walks down the street with the dog on a leash and enters the bookies or the pawn shop.
Right.
And that dog, I guess the loophole that we're trying to close here is how did that dog know how to get back to the gypsy campground?
I don't think it's about how did the dog know. It's how did Vinny know to go to the campground that Brad Pitt is at, that Tommy and Turkish are also visiting to get the caravan.
Well, I still think it's how the dog know. If the dog, do we just take it on faith that the dog also came from that campground? Because the dog had to know how to get back there.
Yeah,
Well,
because later in the scene, Saul says, how did the dog know to go right back to where it came from, or something along those lines.
And so it's just crazy coincidence that that dog also happens to be the same place where the bare knuckle boxing champ happened to live and the mother got burned down.
So once again, you're basically backing up your point that the Pikeys kind of, everything revolves around them and that they have their finger on every part of this story.
They are the singularity.
Wow, look at that.
Uh-huh.
yep.
The
Crazy
dog was
stuff.
a plant. The dog was a plant. It was a
Right.
pikey plant.
I do love that the dog does end up swallowing the squeaky toy, and that was a note that I had. Is I loved the consistency every time you get back to the dog that the dog is squeaking.
I know.
Yeah.
Every time they touch the dog, it squeaks. They pat it, it squeaks. That you talk about sound work. That's really great little touch, that little nuance of keeping that in. They didn't have to do that. We wouldn't have noticed.
Yeah, I know. But it's humor.
Yeah.
I feel like they add that stuff in. I mean, even they do it through the music too, with all of the Hava Nagila, ringtones and stuff like that. But that's all post work.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite sequences too is when all three parties are driving. This is when Cousin Avi and Bulletooth Donnie and Avi are driving with Avi's assistant with the sword in the back. They crash because Tommy throws a shake outside of his window, and then that creates Boris the Blade getting hit by a car because Saul and Vinny are testing the replica guns, which blows them out and, creates distraction, and they hit him when they're driving. Like, that whole sequence, I watched a couple times because the timing was just awesome.
The timing was awesome. Apparently that stunt, when the car runs up on that post, on that pole, as the car came back down, it settled on the pole, and the pole went up through the chassis of the car. And that apparently was not supposed to happen. And there was some to do that it was like this close from seriously injuring one of the stunt guys, or maybe actors. I don't know if they actually did their stunt.
I would doubt
but
that.
apparently that was super dangerous.
That sequence, I think, is a brilliant sequence because it uses that nonlinear storytelling so well, where you see the whole thing kind of from Vinny and Saul's perspective first, as they are driving and they shoot the replica and blow out all the windows, and then all of a sudden there's this guy in front of them that they run down, and then you kind of cut back to the other story and you kind of see this thing happen three different times from different perspectives, as you see them, as you see the story with Turkish and Tommy, and then as you see the story with Cousin Avi and Bulletooth Tony, and it's great how you kind of blend those three stories together in this nonlinear way, so you really kind of piece together the order that it all happened, and it just makes it so fun to watch. And I don't know. That type of storytelling, I think, is just really invigorating in cinema because you can the shifting of perspectives as you see things that you how did that happen? Then all of a sudden you know how it happened, and you're looking forward to seeing how all the pieces come in and work together. And I think he does it so well here.
That recursive pattern in the film, too, it feels like it has a really wonderful pace in the context of the whole film, because we sort of get that the overall film is tying these longer segments together of these stories and showing how these elements relate to one another. That sequence, it happens so fast that you can get the whole concept of what just happened. It feels almost like the resolution of a slapstick, like a Marx Brothers or a Three Stooges kind of a thing, but it happens so quickly that you get the whole concept and still get to keep the recursion, kind of the narrative folding in on itself element that I think is really gratifying if you keep up with it.
Agree.
Jason Statham as Turkish.
Probably his best movie ever.
I think so too. What's so cool about it is, as an incredibly talented physical actor, right? I mean, he's an incredibly physical guy and can totally pull off the physical elements. Yeah, you almost would have expected him to be cast as
Mickey?
as Mickey, right? As the boxer, right? He certainly has the physique and the talent to pull it off, but he also, I think he just does a great job as the kind of clumsy, stuck in the middle of this thing, kind of amateur boxing promoter. And you used the word amateur earlier. I think emphasis really on amateur. All of these guys are, they wear the clothes of their field, but they're truly incompetent at it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know actually if there's any character other than maybe Doug the Head, the diamond buyer, who isn't an amateur, because Doug the Head is starts it and ends it, because he ends up with the diamond.
He does, right. and he runs the larger operation. I guess Dennis Farina, too, runs his larger operation.
Now, what happened to Dennis Farina? He just...
we see him heading back to London at the end, right?
He goes back to London to start the whole thing over again.
Right.
So our assumption is, at least my assumption is, Dennis Farina ultimately ends up with the diamond, as was intended all along. This is like the Indiana Jones didn't actually need to be in Raiders of the Lost Ark for the thing to work out just as it was. Like, this whole movie did not need to happen. Ultimately, Farina was going to get the diamond.
Right. It's just a lot more fun the way he got it.
Yeah, much more fun the way he got it.
Absolutely.
Dennis Farina is just a treat to watch, because he always brings this air of what the hell am I doing here to every movie he does, and that's part of his kind of vibe. But it really works well here because he's with people who are truly out of sorts.
My favorite bit with him is when he's in the hallway and Boris the Blade comes in. And it's right when those guys are in the hallway. Vinny and Saul are in the hall, and they're going to take the briefcase from him. And then Bullet Tooth Tony shoots through the wall to get him. And just the bit with Boris the Blade, how he just is like, he's that guy who just won't die, and it's just so funny how many times Bullet Tooth Tony has to shoot him to bring him down finally.
Yeah, and it works well for Tyrone.
Yes, yes, it does.
Bullet Tooth Tony runs out. He tries to shoot his last bullet into Tyrone, and he's already used his whole clip on
Boris.
On Boris, the bullet dodger.
That is actually really funny. I weirdly had not made that connection that they call him the bullet dodger, and it took him like 9 shots to actually kill him.
It actually took full 12.
The full 12. That's fantastic.
Yeah, if you count him, because he pulls his clip out and puts a new clip in as he's walking down towards Boris. He said, "Boris, what are you doing here?" And he just starts shooting him, and finally that 12th shot, and he turns around and get Tyrone, and he's out.
That's fantastic.
And that was after having been run down while he's standing in the middle of the road.
Yeah, exactly.
That, of course, is Raid Serbegia, who is one of those character actors who always pops up and is just always a delight to see on screen.
We got to talk about Vinnie Jones, though. I don't think I ever really looked up any of Vinnie Jones's background.
He's a rugby player.
You guys know about him?
I know he's a professional rugby player.
Footballer, yeah. So he played. He was known as one of footballers' hard men. He became famous. Do you know this? Why he became famous?
Grabbing the.
Yeah. Yes. They call that, apparently, did not know this, marking another player. He marked Newcastle United's Paul Gascoigne by grabbing his testicles in the game. happened to get photographed doing it.
And it's of Vinnie Jones's back. You just see Jones on his back. And, I mean, he's just got a handle on him. And the guy that he's got a handle on, it's right on his face, and the agony in his eyes.
There it is.
You found it?
I found it. Oh, he does not look good.
Yeah.
He does not look good.
Did you know that, Andy, or no?
No, I had no idea. I mean, I had read that he had played football, but I didn't realize that. Ow!
Look at
Ow.
and look at Jones's face. He's just steely-eyed. Like, this is just a thing I do.
Just
look at how short those shorts are.
I know. Look at those thighs.
Wow.
Man.
Is that a goalie that he's doing that to?
No.
With the striped shirt, or that's
Looks
just
like,
the stripes?
It's the ref.
Yeah.
That's we're obviously going to be putting that link in the show notes. So if you missed that, you gotta check out the show notes.
Wow,
that'll be worth it.
That is brutal. He is so good in this film, and this is just his second film after Lock, Stock.
He hasn't done a whole lot else, has he?
He did The Midnight Man. He's done a number. He's got a regular spot on Gallivant, the TV series. He Kill Kane, Bite, Gridlocked, 6 Ways to Die, Checkmate, Rivers 9, Awaken. Have you seen any of these? Mercenary Absolution. He's got a number of credits. He's got like 91 credits to his title now. Of course, most of these were after Snatch. Before that, he had done. You know what he did do in 2000 is the hit remake, Nicolas Cage remake of Gone in 60 Seconds.
Oh, that's right.
Dominic
That's
Sena.
right. I remember.
Yeah.
I remember him in that.
Yeah, I think he's a busy guy. It's just he's in a lot of things that I haven't seen.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, geez,
Right.
he did Swordfish.
The only other thing I
forgotten
remember him in is X-Men: The Last Stand, where he played Juggernaut.
Yep. Anyway, he's done a number of things.
And what about Guy Ritchie? He doesn't seem like he's done much since getting a divorce from Madonna.
Yeah, I think he's practically more famous for his relationship with Madonna than his career. I mean, as a director, he's only got 13 credits, and a couple of those are video games or music videos, shorts.
What was his most recent film?
Well, Man
he
from
just did-
Uncle.
Okay.
Right. And then he's doing right now I think he's currently filming the Knights of the Round Table movie, which is supposed to come out next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean he's been busy enough. I mean, since he did Snatch, then he did Swept Away, which was that huge bomb he did with Madonna.
Right.
Revolver, which I missed. He did Rock and Rolla, which I also missed, and then he did the 2 Sherlock Holmes movies. So it's kind of been like, kind of consistently busy, but not like cranking them out every year. I gotta say, talking about Bricktop for a second. I mean, you had mentioned how just badass this guy is. I mean, I think that this is one of those just evil characters in film that is just so well written and just such an interesting guy. I mean, I mean, he's a terrifying character, but I don't know. There's something about the way that he's written that I could have just had him on the screen all the time. I just absolutely loved hearing his stories, like the whole thing where he's talking about, why you feed people to pigs to get rid of them and stuff like that. I mean, just like some crazy stuff. And with those glasses on his face, I mean, his eyes already kind of have a slightly off look, but then you put those like thick Coke bottle glasses on him and he just has this look that is just, I mean, I thought it was just really terrifying. I loved Alan Ford as this character.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is the way that they shot him. They always shot him from below, looking up at him, which kind of creates a sense of power, not to be messed with type of a feeling. And every time he speaks, it's like you're forced to listen. Even though Vinny and Saul didn't know who he was when he walked into the shop, it was clear that he was in charge the moment he stepped foot into there, which is just badass.
There's such an awesome bit. I love that you point out that he was usually shot from below, and I think that is right on. What's so cool about it is in some of his most intense sequences, he's shot from below, but he's always surrounded by people like Errol who are much larger than he is. Mm-hmm. So there's that little bit of visual irony where he's shot from below, and even though we know he is small in stature, he is really large because these guys are terrified of him, because he does things like, as he's walking out of the ring on the first time, this creeped me out, as he says, he stops the guy who says, "Oh, thanks for, nothing wherever you are. He says, if you stop me while I'm walking again, I will cut your Jacobs off. And then off camera, you hear the knife open, and then the guy pulls his hand away from his groin with blood on it.
Yeah.
Trying to make sense of what he just did there. Felt kind of like he was cutting his Jacobs off.
Yeah, I think it was the warning, before he actually feeds him to the pigs, so to speak. I love the speech though that he gives about the pigs, man. When he says, "Be wary of any man who owns a pig farm." It's just like,
it did make me question, like, do I know anybody who has a lot of pigs? Because I really should start thinking about that.
The first time I watched it, I actually started looking that up to see if that was all true, because it was pretty shocking that a pig could consume 8 pounds of human flesh and chew through bone-like butter in an hour or whatever it was, and every it's hard to search that stuff on Google without raising some flags, but it seemed pretty believable. At least I guess anything that Alan Ford will tell me, I'll believe.
Alan Ford, voice of reason. Yeah. They did the same thing. The same thing in what was the third
Hannibal?
Hannibal, yeah, the third Lecter book and movie. It was all about the pigs, and it was the same sort of thing. But what I like so much about Bricktop's speech is just how mechanical it is, right? How specific he is about it. That's one of the like greatest written menacing speeches that I've seen. He just really pulls it off.
Yeah.
Well, and he doesn't give the speech as a threat.
No.
He gives it it's very factual the way he delivers it, but you can, like, the subtext of it is so threatening.
It's such an ensemble cast that's, I feel like every character is an amazing character that is easy to talk about.
Well, I was just going to say, back to Bricktop real quick. I thought it was interesting that they originally offered that part to Sean Connery.
Really?
Who actually liked the script quite a bit, and so Matthew Vaughn, the producer, arranged to screen Lock, Stock for him because he hadn't seen that, just so he could kind of get a feel for what their filmmaking style was like.
Right.
And he liked it, but he said that they weren't going to be able to afford him. So I'm not quite sure.
He didn't give him the Brad Pitt discount?
Right. I guess not. This was that period in Connery's career where I feel like he probably should have given a few discounts, because he started cranking out some real stinkers.
Yeah.
I don't feel like Sean Connery would have that ruthless effect the way that Alan Ford does. And maybe it's because there's a little bit of typecast when you think of Sean Connery. You know his work, you know what he's capable of. Before Snatch, I'd never seen Alan Ford, and I don't know if I've seen Alan Ford since then. I'm sure I have, and I just didn't realize it. But I don't know. He's one of those mobsters that it's weird, because from the get-go, I felt like Bricktop was the head honcho. He was the one not to be reckoned with. But after that first fight, there's multiple people getting on him. And he's the one backing away, saying, I'm sorry, I'll make it up to you. I promise I'll make it up to you. And from that point forward, it was like, well, who's in charge here? Because Bricktop kind of shows this strength that he runs the show, and he's the one who decides who lives and who dies. But at the fight, he's basically, he now owes favors to those guys the same way Turkish doesn't want to be in Bricktop's pocket.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point on this Sean Connery. I don't think I would have been able to pull myself out of awareness that this is Sean Connery in watching this film. I don't think I would have been able to let that go. Certainly not to the degree that I was able to let go that this was Brad Pitt and not Mickey. I think that typecasting thing would have played very much against them in a Sean Connery cast. Matthew Vaughn produced this thing.
Yeah, he was kind of involved right away in Guy Ritchie's beginnings, producing Lock, Stock with him, and then this, and then of course he became quite the little director, and I enjoy both sides of him, producing and directing.
I do too. The last time we talked about him on this show was Kingsman: The Secret Service, which was
such a fun movie.
Fantastic.
Such a fun movie. Yeah.
you can almost get a sense watching Kingsman. The reason maybe that's why I like Snatch so much is that there are pieces of it that feel similar visually. I think the way he handles action is certainly you can feel like he sort of learned some things from working with Ritchie.
Yeah.
I mean, even right away from Layer Cake, I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I felt like that also kind of had just a little bit of Guy Ritchie feel to it.
Right. Yeah, I didn't realize that he directed Kick-Ass. But yeah, I honestly, when I went and saw Kingsman, it was the first time in a long time that it was just a really fun movie from beginning to end. And Layer Cake, I thought was great too. I forgot about Layer Cake.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that it's kind of like this, where it's like I remember really enjoying it, but I just don't remember a whole lot about it. I feel like that one might be another one that's worth revisiting.
Yeah,
Certainly.
I mean, Daniel Craig from an earlier film, I thought he was great. I haven't seen it in quite a while, but I think Tom Hardy's in it too, actually.
Yeah, Tom Hardy, absolutely. And that I was just going to mention. I think Daniel Craig. It sort of works against him that he was Bond, because as soon as he became Bond, it's hard to remember what else he did.
Well, I think that was the film that kind of spurred them on to saying, "Hey, this guy could actually work as James Bond."
Right. The one thing I would have loved to have seen more of Benicio del Toro.
He leaves with some indignity.
Yeah, he does, and I thought I thought we were going to kind of dive a little bit deeper into his character, but it kind of came out of nowhere. It's like that scene in The Departed when towards the end when they're in the elevator and the elevator doors open and he gets shot in the head. I wasn't expecting Benicio del Toro to just get shot in the head by the bullet dodger.
It did come very abruptly.
And it was over. It was like, okay, Benicio's done now, And I was the first time I saw it, I was kind of waiting to see if he comes back in one of the flashbacks. He probably had 3 or 4 days of work on that thing.
But a lot of costume changes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, so into the production. We've talked just a little bit about sound mix, Simon Hayes, and sound design and effects editor Matthew Collinge. You said initially you found some sound problems besides the opening sequence. What is it about shooting a movie like this that causes those kinds of challenges to creep up?
Well, I felt like there was a lot of car work in this movie. It looked to me like it was all poor man's process, meaning done on a budget, so that you can't basically cable the car to a trailer and do it the right way, so to speak. But I could tell that, the talent in the car was wired, because every time there was seatbelts or, any kind of movement, you can't help but hear the rustling of the clothing. Personally, and it's all the mixer's decision how this stuff goes down. But when I have people in a car, I never wire, just because it's added noise floor to, the ISOs that I don't want. And I'm all about planting mics. We were doing a driving scene yesterday or on Friday with Mark Wahlberg, and he's driving himself. And, he's got all this crap on the car to light it and, cameras mounted, and there's cameras in the car and all that. And there's no place for me to be. And there's no way for me to actually mix. So really the way you do those is you set it and forget it, but it's all about kind of giving yourself options with plant mics. I put mics in strategic places in cars, and I felt like on this movie it would have done a lot to open up some kind of ambient boundary microphones in the cars, because it kind of fills in the sound of the presence of their voices. There's things like that. There was obvious areas that were buried and muffled and were clear that you couldn't get a boom in there, even though the shot was tight. It seemed like it was pretty obvious that he was shooting 2 cameras, and he must have had one wide and one tight, which unfortunately seems to be the norm these days.
And that just ruins your ability to fit a mic in there somewhere where you can't see it.
Yeah, I mean, when directors shoot these movies, the last thing that they think about is sound. There's directors like Tarantino who rely heavily on sound, and they'll shoot a movie around sound. So much so that, like The Hateful Eight, Mark Yolano is the mixer for all of Tarantino's films. He doesn't do a single bit of ADR. There's no looping in The Hateful Eight. There's no looping in Pulp Fiction. because he shoots with one camera, so you're always getting your perspective. If you're shooting big, high, and wide, and you can get a boom at the edge of the frame and it sounds big, high, and wide, then you're accomplishing your perspective. And I feel like not only does it help the movie greatly in the storytelling and sounding the way it looks, but it keeps your actors comfortable because it means that you don't have to sit there and bug them and wire them and touch them in between every setup in order to try and make one camera sound the way it looks, which is tight, and the other camera that's big and wide is what you're using your boom for.
Can you tell, like, when there's ADR? Like, could you pinpoint any ADR from this film?
Yeah. I mean, obviously the whole opening sequence was looped.
The robbery.
Yeah, the robbery was looped. I didn't notice a lot in this movie, to be honest with you. There's a couple times when Saul and Vinny and Tyrone are in the car with the dog waiting, or not with the dog at that point. Or were they with the dog when they were waiting for the Frankie Four Fingers to go in with the briefcase to the bookies?
I don't think so, not yet.
I don't think the dog was there yet. But, they're shooting at the backs of these three guys, and if you catch a glimpse of the side of their cheek, or it turns into a dirty over, you can see that the guy you're listening to isn't talking right now. Stuff like that kind of I pick up on, and it's not that it bugs me, it's part of the process. But a lot of times, when they loop, it's not necessarily because of sound issues, it's because of performance issues or line changes and stuff like that.
Do you find you're really annoying to go to a movie with? Do your friends and family complain that they want to sit like not next to you? Or?
9 out of 10 times I go to the movies by myself, just because I pick it apart to a certain extent. And the thing is too that you got to realize, and it's such a crappy stigma about it, but sound guys are grumpy. Sound guys are negative. Sound guys, like, it's an uphill battle. It's like as soon as I walk on set, right, I'll go on to the Scouts and we'll be on the same bus and we'll be sharing lunches and beers and everybody's friends. And then as soon as we start day one of shooting, it's like I'm the no matter what. Like there's 200 people on set and one gives a about what it sounds like. Everybody there, from props to set deck to grip, lighting, electric, whoever, is there to make a pretty picture. I don't care what it looks like. I just want it to sound good. So I'm telling, I'm the bad guy who has to tell everybody to turn off their phones and get away from set and move the generator and turn off your truck. And, it's like, it's hard being that guy. But it's super important because I have a crew of a boom operator and a utility. It's super important that they're nice and sweet. So that way they can get what they want on set and we can do our job. While I'm the Grinch, so to speak. So that being said, yeah, it's always an uphill battle. And when I go to the movies, I'm a critic because I know how it was made or how it's done. And I'm the worst critic on my movies. I'm never happy with any of the movies that I've done. There's always something. I just went and saw 10 Cloverfield. There's a fish tank in the dungeon, in the cellar, in the bunker. We shoot the wide with the fish tank on, so you see it, and I record 30 seconds of ambience of the fish tank bubbling, and then we shut it off for the next 6 weeks and get rid of the fish, okay? But in every scene of 10 Cloverfield, you hear that fish tank bubbling in the background, and it drives me absolutely bananas. Because I tried so hard. I mean, they were exotic fish. We had to find a place for these exotic fish to go. It's like, I'm trying so hard to isolate and get rid of the things that I don't see, because if I don't see it, I don't want to hear it. It's the same way if we're shooting faces and traffic's behind us and I hear traffic, I'll go ballistic. But if we're shooting the other direction, so that way we can see the traffic behind them moving, fine, let's listen to it, Right. It's stuff like that kind of gets me riled up.
That's crazy. I don't know that I would have thought about the fish tank thing, but so what you're saying, you don't want, even though the fish tank, you imagine if I were sitting in the cellar, I would always be hearing the fish tank. So wouldn't that be part of the natural soundscape?
No, because the whole point of recording it for 30 seconds clean is that you can lay it in wherever you want, which is what they did.
Right.
Whereas to have it on over dialogue, you're married to it. You can't isolate it from the dialogue tracks. If I want to basically separate a line in post after the fact, you're going to basically have this block of time where you're missing the bubbling if it were on. So I want to record everything with it off and let them lay it in as they want. The problem that I had was that they lay it in to a point where you hear it. And I guess in my mind, if we're shooting next to it, then sure. But if we're shooting in, I don't know, if we're in the kitchen of the room, you wouldn't hear it in the kitchen of the room.
They were just a little bit too aggressive with it.
I'm not bashing it because I think the post sound guys did a fantastic job. The movie relies a lot on sound, which I love. I mean, sometimes I feel like I should get in a radio because I care about the sound so much. But anyway, the whole point of my long-winded story is that I'm not the easiest person to go to movies with, and I'm critical. I'm very critical.
Well, you'd be happy to know that Matthew Vaughn and Guy Ritchie started a fine on the set of this film anytime someone's cell phone would go off or anything, any issues that people cause. They actually made them put money into a jar.
Yeah, we do that on a lot of movies. Actually, it goes into the $5 Friday bucket.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's interesting though because I think it speaks critically to, especially a film like this, how so much of the style is so in your face. You know, you have a very aggressive visual style and an editing style, and I think it makes sense that the sound style would also be that way. And I think they play it up sometimes more than others. I mean, even just the way that the thing that I'm remembering right now is when some of the supers come on the screen of the different cities that people are in, and you get little sound effects coming in with the name of the cities and then going out with the name of the cities. And it was a very fun style that they had all through the film. And so, I mean, I think that they, both the cinematography by Tim Maurice Jones and the editing by John Harris, along with all the audio, I think it all ties in nicely in kind of to help create this style that Guy Ritchie has. And I think despite problems that are in it, I think it's very easy to just enjoy the story, because when a story is really fun and you're really into the story, I think it is a lot easier to gloss over any issues that you might have.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%.
You know, I think you mentioned Tim Maurice Jones. Just overall, the visual production, and I think the editing of this film it's a pretty ridiculous edit, just with all the crazy looping narratives, and much credit to those guys for pulling that off, because it does. Besides the dog thing, which I'm still kind of stewing on, it works really, really well. It's visually tight. It's easy to watch, and not too terribly distracting. So, terrific work.
Did either of you guys think that there would be a follow-up to this movie based on where it was left off?
I didn't think so. I don't remember at the time when it came out. I don't recall saying, gosh, this feels like they're setting it up for a sequel. I guess I could see that. It seems like it would be interesting to kind of continue the story and following this diamond as it kind of continues its journey now. Or maybe we continue following the story of the dog. I don't know whose story we'd follow. But it didn't cross my mind. Is that something that you thought of when it finished?
Just this last time, just yesterday when I watched it, it just felt like we never see Avi get there to actually, to claim the diamond that apparently is that's his. And there's still quite a few characters that remain after all the killings. It just seemed like there was some open-ended areas that could have still been fun to explore. The pikeys just disappear. And I would love to know where Brad and the boys are at that point, Mickey.
Right.
But I don't know. It just...
I guess I'm torn on that, because I think you're right. I mean, these were such fun characters to explore. At the same time, I really do like the fact that it ends on a hard the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it ends on that passport stamp, which I find really, there's a great sense of finality to it. And I guess maybe I'm sequeled out right now. I love the idea of a film that just gives me an isolated experience and I get to enjoy it. Don't worry. I mean, in 15 years, it'll be rebooted.
With the same cast.
Yeah. Right. Let's see. We've talked about the music a little bit. Again, the music was a little bit genre defying. You hear this kind of music all over the place in these heist films now.
Yeah.
Well, and it seems like, I don't know, I mean, definitely going back to Tarantino at the beginning of this, I mean, he certainly established this brilliant way to kind of find obscure songs and build these really fantastic soundtracks. I feel like Guy Ritchie kind of took that type, and I feel like he enhanced it quite a bit, because I really enjoy it just feels like his songs almost fit a little more. They don't feel quite as anachronistic as sometimes Tarantino's do. As fun as I think Tarantino's soundtracks are, I just really like the songs in this. They really seem to fit this world a little bit.
Yeah, I thought the music was fantastic. And I really like the hard cuts out of the music. As soon as, a barrel of a gun is snapped shut, or the revolver snapped shut, or as soon as a book is closed, as soon as there's a punch from Mickey, it's like the music just snaps out and we're back into the story.
Let's. How did it end up doing, Andy? Did you look up any awards, or did it score well?
I didn't find any awards that it received, but it did end up finding its audience eventually, and it certainly has kind of become I guess you could almost say a cult classic now. This film cost $10 million when it was made, which is about $13.5 million in today's dollars. It ended up grossing here in the U.S. about $30 million and overseas about $53.5 million. So all told, it did real well for itself. It made a total adjusted gross of about $113 million. So that's about an adjusted profit per finished minute of almost $1 million.
Had this movie been made today, it would have had a sequel.
Yes.
With that kind of money.
Yes, it would have. So, yeah, no, I mean, it really found its audience. I think it was just initially, people weren't quite sure what to make of it. And I don't think the critics were very favorable with it. I think they all felt it was just a rehash of Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, which I think is just, I mean, maybe it was because they came out so close together, but I think that they're both so different and so fresh. I don't see them as being rehashes. So I don't know.
Well, I think it's time for us to dig into why people show up and rank it. You head over to flickchart.com, everybody, and you log in with your account. And what it's going to do is when you search for this film, it's going to present you two movies, this movie and one other movie, a completely random movie. And you get to choose one movie against the other, which one you think is better. Now, on our list, we have all the films that we have talked about, 200 some odd films, and it will rank, it will present us a choice of this movie, Snatch, against all the other movies that we have talked about. It'll give us about eight or 10 choices, and we have to pick and see which one we like better right now. Filmo off Filmo. If you're on a desert island and all you have are these two movies, which one would you watch right now? And it tends to give people a little bit of ulceritis, but we get through it, and it ends up being kind of a fun discussion. So here we go. First things first. And if there's a movie that we run across that you haven't seen, don't worry about it. Andy and I will break that and move right on. So
all right. So first up, we have Snatch or Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Snatch.
Little Coen Brothers.
Are you ready, Andy? For the first time, Snatch.
Top of the Oh Brother block. This is a kind of a consistent thing here. Oh Brother is kind of the first one up because it's right in the middle of our chart, and so it always ends up blocking a lot of movies out of it. Boy, I'm torn. I actually feel like I'm going to pick Snatch, and it's interesting. I don't think I would have said that
before you'd watched
before
it.
I rewatched it,
I'm
but
telling you.
I had so much fun with it, so I'm going to pick Snatch.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have Snatch or Boogie Nights.
Snatch.
It's another good movie. I'm going to do Snatch, though.
Yeah, I think I got to do Snatch, too.
With a bullet, Andy.
I know. It's moving right up there. They have a great poster for Snatch that's done in that fantastic Saul Bass style of it's the hand of Frankie Four Fingers.
Oh, yeah.
With
it's great. Diamond on it.
Yep. All right, Snatch or National Lampoon's Vacation?
Oh, Snatch.
Snatch.
I feel like I have to go with Vacation because it's just like classic from my childhood.
Thank
Snatch
God it doesn't matter.
I know. You guys already got it up there. Now, this one's going to be tough for me. Snatch or Brazil, which is my favorite film. So I'm going to go with Brazil.
I've never seen it.
Oh,
all right, Pete, then it's all on you.
Well, I'll give you Brazil on this one too, Andy. I think.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. That's a tough one to beat for us. We like the Brazil.
I'm going to write that one down. Is that the one that Abraham talked about?
No, he talked about My Favorite Year with
right.
Peter O'Toole. Yeah. All right, Snatch or Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Snatch.
It's tough here.
Snatch.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm totally Close Encounters.
No, we're gonna get letters.
We are gonna get letters. I'm glad I'm on the right side of the letters. This one. All right, Snatch or Stand By Me?
Man, Stand By Me's got like I have a place in my heart for Stand By Me because it's that adventure as a boy. It's almost like Goonies.
Yeah, of your youth.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to stay with Snatch though.
Well, I'm gonna say Stand By Me.
I'm gonna go Snatch, Andy.
Wow. All right.
I picked a good one, Andy.
You picked a good one. It's moving way up there.
Snatch ended up at number 14 on my personal list.
I know, it's really good.
Yeah.
Here's another a Speakeasy ranking. Snatch or Casino Royale? Speaking of Daniel Craig as James Bond.
Casino Royale for me.
Yeah, I'll pick Casino Royale. What about you, Coffee?
I'm going to stay with Snatch. It's gritty. It's darker.
And it is funnier.
Casino Royale the one with Javier Bardem?
No, it's not. It's the one with Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Who cried blood.
Yeah.
Yes.
So good.
At the table.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm staying with Snatch.
All right. Well, it moved way up there. It ranked as number 18 on our list. And I think that's a pretty fair spot for it. I mean, I'd still put Stand By Me above it, but that's okay. It's right between Snowpiercer and Stand By Me. So I think it did
it's
good
tough
spot.
to break the top 20 anymore. It's tough to do that. The last thing we do is just a straight up star ranking. This is for one of our other favorite sites, letterboxd.com. A scale of 1 to 5 stars. Where do you put this film, Coffee?
4.5.
Yeah, I'm 4.5. Andy?
I am at 4, but it's a very favorable 4.
Yeah, very favorable 4. This was awesome. What a great film to pick.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed it.
I'm actually really glad that you switched it, because as much as I love Pulp Fiction, it's been talked about a lot. And like you said at the beginning, I just feel Snatch is one of those films that kind of came and went weirdly. And right. I don't feel like that's fair. So I'm really glad to have watched it again.
Yeah. And when I didn't know if I was able to switch, because I was going back and forth between Snatch and Memento, but I didn't know if I wanted to really sit there and wrap my head around Memento again. But it's another one of my favorites.
Well, this is terrific. Where would you like people to find you on the web? This is we need a plug. What are you working on? What do you want to share? And where can people catch up with you?
Right now I'm doing Peter Berg's Patriots Day, which is the true story of the Boston Marathon bombing, which, as I mentioned earlier in the show, is tomorrow, is the marathon. And that'll be out in January of 17, I believe. And then after this, I go to Atlanta to start a film called Den of Thieves with the director of London is Falling, or London has Fallen. Which one? It's one of those two.
London Has Fallen, yeah.
And it's with Gerard Butler again, and I'm looking forward to another run around, bang bang, shoot 'em up type of movie. But, I used to have a website for my company, iMix. I don't even know if it's up anymore. But really, IMDb is kind of the only place that I think I'm listed. So,
well, we'll make sure to put a link in the show notes.
Yeah,
so
cool.
Follow you.
Yeah. If you just type in Coffee, Koffy.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us in the Next Reel Speakeasy, Coffee. We're glad to have had you out here today.
Yeah, this was fun. I'm glad we did this.
And for those of you out there, we hope you enjoyed the show. If you like what you heard, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram, Pinterest, Letterboxd, Flickchart, and now YouTube. And don't forget to head on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and comment. It really does help more people find us. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, I've got to go shopping for a Periwinkle Blue Caravan. It's hard to believe that we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies. All that said, producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes.
Becoming a Next Reel member gives you access to all sorts of additional and exclusive content. Plus, you're helping us keep the lights on. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership, where you can learn more about becoming a member, which costs a measly $5 a month, practically the same as one fancy coffee drink. And you get so much more.
Every month, we record a bonus episode exclusively for members. Those episodes cover movies from whatever series we're covering at the moment, or add to previous series.
Some movies we've covered that only members get to hear us discuss include The Blues Brothers,
The Russia House,
Naked Lunch,
Independence Day,
The Hot Rock,
and Relic, the better one. Plus, members get to vote on what we're going to discuss for those episodes.
We also record additional pre- and post-show content in regular episodes that only members get to hear.
like conversations about similarly themed movies.
And answering listener questions from our live member chat.
Speaking of our live member chat, we record almost all of our episodes in Discord, where members can chat right along with us live.
Members get access to other members-only channels in our Discord community as well. On top of all that, members get all episodes a full week earlier than everyone else in a private Next Reel feed just for them that includes all the shows in the Next Reel family. The Next Reel, the film board,
movies we like, Sitting in the Dark, and more new projects on the way.
To top it all off, members don't have to listen to ads. We've already eliminated those annoying, dynamically inserted ads that, let's face it, we all hated.
We are listening to you.
We love podcasting for a living, and those ads help to pay the bills. Now, we're counting on you, dear listener.
We promise we aren't going back to those terrible, dynamically inserted ads that don't relate to us at all. All we ask is that you consider supporting the Next Reel family of podcasts with a membership.
Again, it's $5 per month or $55 per year. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership.
thenextreel.com/membership. Get your access to early, ad-free episodes with bonus content, member bonus episodes, and access to member channels and live streams in Discord by signing up today.